We have 29 participants. I think we're ready to begin.
All right, well, welcome to the 35th meeting of the Fair Employment and Housing Council. We'll start by getting called to order and having Legislative and Regulatory Counsel Brian Sperber take roll call.
Chair Mandelbaum.
Present.
Councilmember Brodsky.
Present.
Councilmember Iglesias.
Present.
Councilmember Ortiz.
Present.
Councilmember Sandoval.
Present.
Councilmember Scher.
Present.
Director Kish.
Present.
So thank you all for attending our first entirely remote meeting as we adjust to the constraints of our new COVID influence world. Obviously, the Zoom is a live function, and we will also have the meeting available afterwards on the DFEH website and YouTube channel. For those members of the public that are participating remotely in today's proceeding, you may have noticed that you are currently muted and your audio is disabled. That's so that we can have a coherent remote video meeting. However, as in all of our in-person meetings, there will be opportunities for public comment and participation throughout the meeting as we tackle our various agenda items. And we have a number of ways for you to provide input and comments. The easiest and most logistically reliable way is to email the council at fehcouncil@dfeh.ca.gov. We'll be checking that email account throughout the meeting, and your comments will be read aloud and considered by the council members. Alternatively, you can also use the Zoom chat feature to send a message directly to the meeting administrator who can read your comment out loud. Or if you'd like to speak directly rather than to have your text written, or your written text rather read, you can click raise hand in the Zoom or press *9 if you called in. And if you'd like to rename yourself in the Zoom list of participants, you can find yourself on the list and click rename in the list of options next to your name. So with that, we'll get going, and we do want to acknowledge our department staff members, and in particular, a new face to some of you, Adam Romero, DFEH's newly appointed Deputy Director of Executive Programs. Deputy Director Romero, congratulations on your appointment, and we are so glad we get to work with you. Those on the council have had a chance to get to know you since the appointment, but would you like to take a moment to introduce yourself to our public participants?
Yeah, thank you, Councilmember Mandelbaum. I'm honored to have been appointed by Governor Newsom to be Deputy Director of Executive Programs at DFEH. And in this role, I oversee the department's teams in the areas of legislative and regulatory affairs, public outreach and education, appeals, Public Records Act requests, and research and reporting, as well as I work on a number of special projects at the department. And to share just a little bit more about myself, I've dedicated my career to advancing civil rights and reducing discrimination. And I was most recently an adjunct law professor at UCLA School of Law, where I taught anti-discrimination law and was a faculty affiliate of the Critical Race Studies program. And I was the Director of Legal Scholarship and Federal Policy at the Williams Institute, which is a multidisciplinary research center focused on issues related to sexual orientation and gender identity. And before that, I was a litigator, both doing patent litigation as well as civil rights litigation. I've long admired the great work and important work of DFEH, including its increasing efforts to address systemic discrimination as well as to prevent discrimination from happening in the first place. And so I'm so pleased to join Director Kish and the rest of the staff to serve the people of California. And it's also my pleasure to work with Mr. Sperber to assist the council on however I may be helpful. Thank you.
Well, thank you. We're really excited to work with you. The aforementioned Brian Sperber, our DFEH Legislative and Regulatory Counsel and informal CEO of the council, I would say. Always good to have you with us. We, as you know, for those who have participated in our in-person meetings, we usually go around the room and introduce ourselves so that we know who we'll be spending the day with. Given the remote constraints, we will skip that process, but we do thank you all for attending, and we look forward to your input and participation throughout the meeting. Our first order of business is to review the agenda, and copies of the agenda and our meeting materials are on the DFEH website, the council's page, the same page that the link to the Zoom meeting is at. So you can obtain the materials there if you don't already have them. Highlights of today's meeting include review and consideration of the proposed final draft of regulations covering criminal history, the Family Rights Act, and the New Parent Leave Act. And we'll also receive updates from our various rulemaking and public hearing subcommittees. Our first order of business is approval of our minutes from our last meeting, which is attachment A to the meeting materials. Highlights from our February 25th meeting in Los Angeles included review and consideration of new draft housing regulations, review and consideration of modified draft of the regulations covering criminal history in the Family Rights Act and New Parent Leave Act that we'll be considering today, along with Government Code 11135 regulations. We also considered and approved the proposed final draft, well, now final draft of regulations regarding religious creed and age discrimination. Any council member edits regarding the minutes from our last meeting? Any public comment in any of our various formats about our meeting minutes?
No email.
No chats. And I'm scrolling for raised hands. None.
Okay, well, with that, I will move for approval of the minutes. We'll be taking roll call votes today. Are there any seconds?
I'll second.
Chair Mandelbaum,
Aye.
Councilmember Brodsky,
Aye.
Councilmember Iglesias,
Aye.
Councilmember Ortiz,
Aye.
Councilmember Sandoval,
Aye.
Councilmember Scher,
Aye.
All right, the minutes are approved unanimously. Our next order of business are council member reports. Is there any reports that council members would like to provide?
Certainly, I'll provide one. So this is Councilmember Ortiz. I just wanted to say that Council's employment regulations regarding religious creed and age discrimination has been finally approved by the Office of Administrative Law. The effective date will be July 1st for those regulations. So thank you, everyone who was involved.
And congrats to you, Councilmember Ortiz, your first finalized in the books regulations.
Great work.
Congrats, great work on that. Our next, anyone else?
Oh, yes, this is Dara. I wanted to say I've had the opportunity to participate in 2 of the department's webinars that it did on the new fair housing regulations. There was a series of them, and I want to commend the department for working on those collaboratively with stakeholders. I enjoyed working on the 2 that I did, reasonable accommodations and harassment and retaliation, or disability regs and harassment and accommodation. I was able to attend a couple of the others, and I thought they were very well attended and an impressive effort. So,
Great.
I want to echo that. I attended a few and participated in one, and I think they're very helpful to the public. I also want to mention I attended and participated in a national webinar on criminal history in housing, and it had a national federal focus, but I made sure people were aware of California's specific regulations.
All right, moving right along, we'll get a report from the greater department, and I'll turn it over to Director Kish.
Thank you. Thanks everyone for being flexible with our first remote council meeting. I think this is a learning experience for all of us. I do want to publicly thank the staff of the Department of Fair Employment and Housing for their flexibility as we move to remote work, telework, full-time for essentially everyone in the department, and our operations are continuing a relatively seamless transition with some of the usual expected bumps in terms of technology. But everyone is doing, excuse me, a fantastic job. And I'm very grateful to everyone's hard work in difficult circumstances. I just have 2 things that I wanted to highlight, and then I'm going to turn it over to Adam for a couple additional department updates. I wanted to just publicly discuss 2 recent settlements that I think are important for the department and the state. The first is a settlement in a housing case, which is the first settlement of a litigated case where we have used the Unruh Civil Rights Act's prohibition on immigration discrimination based on immigration status or perceived immigration status. This was added to the Unruh Act by SB 600 starting in 2016. And we recently settled a case where a landlord will pay $250,000 to resolve the underlying litigation where we allege that the landlord had threatened to report tenants to immigration authorities. So I think this is an important fair housing result and an important Unruh Civil Rights Act result. The second settlement that I'd like to discuss resolves the first case to be filed by DFEH under Civil Code 51.9. And this is authority that was granted to us starting January 1st of last year by SB 224, which gives us enforcement authority over this statute 51.9, which prohibits harassment, sexual harassment in business, services, and professional relationships. So relationships that are outside an employment relationship or an independent contractor relationship that's already covered by the Fair Employment and Housing Act. And in this settlement, the defendants are an investment consortium. We brought the case on behalf of the state with the real party in interest, a single real party, a young woman who was hired or contracted by the consortium. And that case will resolve for $1.8 million.
Wow.
So
Congratulations.
Bravo.
thank you.
Congratulations.
Kevin, are these available on the website or public?
Yes, there are press releases for both of these on our DFEH website. If you scroll to the bottom, you'll see our press page. You click on that and you can get to the press release. And now I'll turn it over. Adam has a few more updates about other things that our staff have been engaged in.
Thank you. I wanted to briefly update the council and the public on some new, really exciting resources that the department has recently made available. First, yesterday, the department launched a free online training aimed at preventing sexual harassment and abusive conduct in California workplaces. The training is available through DFEH's homepage and can be used to meet the legal requirement that by January 1st of next year, employers having 5 or more employees must provide at least 1 hour of classroom or other effective interactive training regarding sexual harassment prevention to all non-supervisory employees. And this legal requirement is contained in Government Code Section 12950.1. Our new training is optimized for mobile devices as well and is accessible for persons with disabilities. It's currently available in English and will be available in 5 additional languages in the coming months, which are Spanish, Simplified Chinese, Tagalog, Vietnamese, and Korean. In addition, in the coming months, the department is planning to launch a similar online training for supervisors in California who are required to complete 2 hours of training by January 1st, 2021. The second new resource I wanted to share is a new brochure that we published last week addressing hate violence amid COVID-19. The brochure is available in 11 languages, including Simplified and Traditional Chinese and Hmong, and has really been widely shared across the state. Our tweet about this brochure has been viewed by more than 30,000 people, I'm happy to report. And this brochure is part of the suite of different resources the department has been providing related to the COVID-19 pandemic, which includes FAQs related to employment and housing issues. And all of these resources are available from our homepage. Third, DFEH recently published 2 resources on the use of criminal history information in housing decisions. One is a set of FAQs that's directed at housing providers, and the second resource is a fact sheet directed at individuals who are seeking housing, and that fact sheet is available in 6 different languages. And these FAQs were designed to make the council's recent regulations in this area even more accessible to stakeholders. And finally, the department recently issued a new poster also available in 6 languages, aimed at preventing discrimination and harassment in shelters. The printed posters are currently being mailed to shelters and local governments across the state. And homelessness, as you know, is a major challenge for our state, and ensuring that everyone is able to access shelters and receive equal services is critical. And that's it for my update. Thank you.
Thank you. Those are some really helpful resources. And in particular, I'd encourage people, we will talk about the training regulations later today that are in the process, but obviously using the department's online one that's already available for non-supervisors is a good way of having some confidence that you're completing your responsibilities to complete the training before January 1st of the upcoming year.
Can I just jump in for 1 second? Chairman Mandelbaum, I just wanted to say I forgot to mention that all those webinars, the fair housing webinars, the PowerPoints are available online on the DFEH website, and they're going to be a great resource for people.
Great. All right, moving right along, our next order of business is to consider the unmodified text of the proposed final employment regulations regarding criminal history, the California Family Rights Act, and the New Parent Leave Act. That's attachment B to the meeting materials for those following along. As you can tell, this draft is identical to the draft that the council approved at our February 25th meeting. We did receive one additional comment during the 15-day comment period, which we reviewed carefully, but ultimately decided we didn't believe further edits were necessary. We also did receive a letter this morning that I have reviewed, although it was well after the comment period ended. And to provide some context, these regulations were originally noticed on September 6, 2019, and thus our deadline to finalize them is coming up. Between the public comments of this current rulemaking and those we received in a prior rulemaking covering many of the same provisions, we feel really good about this draft, that it's the product of a lot of feedback and revisions, and we're hoping the council will approve it so that we can send it to the Office of Administrative Law with enough time to make sure we don't run into any complications on any back end issues that they had, which was the experience we had when many of these provisions went through a prior round of rulemaking. With that, I'll turn it over to Councilmember Ortiz and other council members for comment.
Councilmember Mandelbaum, I've read through the letter we received this morning. I do think that we had a significant amount of time previously. I take the comments with weight, but I from my perspective, the clarifications were just that. I didn't see any substantive change that was necessary, and to be frank, I thought that the document as drafted currently stood on its own and did not require additional changes. So I'm happy with the document as is.
Agreed.
Let's see. So I think, first of all, I think the draft was really very, very good. And I think I read the comment letter that came in today, and I realized that I guess from a legal perspective, it doesn't have to be considered or whatever, because it's outside the comment time. However, and I think almost all of the comments in it are probably helpful and clarifying, but maybe not necessary. The one I feel a little bit might cross the line towards being necessary is the comment on the bottom of page 2, where it talks about modifying the language in section 11017.1 G2 regarding the notice to an adversely impacted employee for the reasons for their exclusion.
So that made sense to me, but that's statutory. So the statute says explicitly, you have the opportunity, you may, but do not have to provide the rationale behind it. So I didn't mean to cut you off, Councilmember Iglesias, but I agree with you that's a substantively makes a lot of sense. But that's something we considered previously, but the statute, I think, makes pretty clear that that's a permissive, not a mandatory, and I don't think we have the authority to convert it.
Okay, thank you, that's helpful.
Do you anticipate, or does the department anticipate doing FAQs to provide guidance, just more simplified on this part, on the criminal history part in particular?
We already do have FAQs on the
employment
criminal
part.
history, and we can continue to revise them, especially if these changes are made. We can incorporate anything that isn't already in there into the FAQs.
One of the reasons I ask is because the last time I pointed out that I wondered if everyone understands what a conditional offer of employment is. And just, I thought that might be something that could be, I think the regs are great. I mean, this is not a criticism of them, but maybe that's something that could be fleshed out a little bit in an FAQ, is what constitutes a conditional offer.
That's certainly, I think, something that can be examined, and the regs do have in there some language about gamemanship with respect to offers in terms of people who are, hired unconditionally and then promptly reviewed. 2 days later, it doesn't convert them from an applicant to an employee and render the ban the box law inapplicable. Slightly different version of kind of playing with the conditional offer or applicant employee dynamic, but I certainly appreciate what you're getting at, and I think either through FAQs or further rulemaking, that's something to examine.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I mean, didn't we just recently put in language in the applicant definition to address that? I mean, perhaps it's not expressed, but it's definitely implicit as to what the definition of conditional offer is. But I do think a FAQ on it would be helpful.
Any other council member comments before we turn it over to public comment? All right, hearing none, we can turn it over to public comment in our various formats.
No emails.
There's no chats, and I'm scanning for raised hands. Double checking. No raised hands.
Okay, with that, I will move to
Excuse me, a comment just came in in the chat box. Can you speak to how right to sue letters are getting issued now?
Well, that's obviously that's something for the greater department. The council is not involved in the enforcement process, so I'm not sure that can be addressed here. But if it can, it would be obviously. I'll turn it over to Director Kish.
Yeah, I don't know exactly how to answer that question, so I would encourage the asker to simply email one of us. But right to sues are typically issued in 3 ways. One is a person can come to us and just get one. They don't need to engage in the process of investigation. These are in employment cases only. That is available either electronically, you can use our system and get it, or you can send in a form that's available on our website, or you can call or email us. Another way that right to sues are issued is at the end of a process, at the end of an investigation of an employment case. If we determine that the complaint lacks sufficient evidence for us to move forward, that the investigation didn't reveal sufficient evidence for us to move forward, we issue the right to sue notice at the end of the investigation.
Great. So I will move to a motion that has 3 components. 1, adopting these proposed final text contained in attachment B. 2, authorizing the department to submit the rulemaking package to the Office of Administrative Law. And 3, authorizing the department to make any non-substantive or non-substantial changes that are required by the Office of Administrative Law to approve the regulations. Any seconds?
Second.
All right, we'll do a roll call vote.
Chair Mandelbaum,
Approve.
Councilmember Brodsky,
Approve.
Councilmember Iglesias,
Approve.
Councilmember Ortiz, Councilmember Ortiz,
It looks like his video might be frozen. We can pass him.
okay, Councilmember Sandoval,
Approve.
Councilmember Sure.
Approve.
All right. Well, there's certainly the motion passes with one likely approval, although I guess it'll go down as a abstention. For sake of efficiency, we'll move right along, but the motion passes. Our next order of business is an update from the subcommittee regarding hate violence. We can go back to this if this is one that Councilmember Ortiz was going to address. Councilmember Brodsky, would that be a good idea?
Yeah, that would be a good idea.
Okay, so why don't we go?
We lost him from the screen though, so
Yeah, he's probably going to log back on. So why don't we skip ahead to the next one and we'll go back for that agenda item. So we'll move to the update on employment regulations regarding harassment prevention training. This was referenced from the report by the department. Obviously now we have the training that the department's online training is available for the non-supervisory personnel. We also do, for those who are not aware, have regulations that have been passed by the council and are in the process of being, well, they were approved by agency and they'll go through an OAL process and then published for 45-day comments. And our hope is that we will have regulatory guidance around the time, give or take, of the new deadline or shortly thereafter as new employees are trained. Right now, I'd say certainly, many people have been trained, but if you haven't, utilizing the free, training of the department is a good idea. But we hope to have the public hearing for this sometime in the August-September timeframe, and we'll keep people posted. Any council comment regarding the subcommittee update? Any public comment? Any public comment on the subcommittee report?
No emails.
can't hear you, Adam.
No chats, and I'm scanning now for raised hands among the participants. Double checking. No raised hands.
All right, well, we'll move right along to the update from the Housing Regulations Subcommittee regarding the new draft housing regulations. And I'll turn it over to Councilmember Sherman Iglesias.
You want to go ahead, Derek?
Sure. We're in the process of finalizing the documents that need to be submitted to the Office of Administrative Law on the regulations that were approved by the council at the last meeting on a variety of topics, including intentional discrimination, discriminatory advertisements, statements and notices, consideration of income, a technical change to residential real estate related practices, and disability issues, primarily reasonable modifications in addition to reasonable accommodations. We are cautiously optimistic that that will be out for public comment in around the same time frame that was just discussed, August and September. Look for those.
Great. Any council member comments regarding the update? Any public comment?
I have a question. Assuming that it all goes smoothly, when do you expect that they will take effect? January 1? Is that the goal?
These are the new housing regulations. They'll be going out for the initial 45-day
I
comment
thought
period.
These are the original set.
No,
Okay.
the original set was effective January 1st
Yeah.
of this year.
Yeah.
These are new proposed regulations that are just about to enter the formal public hearing process. Sorry, I should have been clearer.
Councilmember Ortiz has just rejoined. Let me unlock his audio and video, if you just give me a moment.
Thank you. I apologize for the technical difficulties.
Welcome back, Councilmember Ortiz. Just in time, let's move back to the update from the subcommittee regarding hate violence.
My apologies. There's actually one housing comment,
Oh, there is a comment. Okay.
and that's from the California Apartment Association. They
Okay.
thank the council for their continued work and look forward to engaging with the council on these regulations.
Thank you. We look forward to that input as well.
And no chats, and scanning now for raised hands. Double checking. No raised hands.
Okay, so we'll go, we'll turn it over to council members Ortiz and Brodsky for the update from the subcommittee regarding the hate violence hearing.
Certainly, and I guess I'll go first if that's okay, Dale, unless
Oh,
you'd
yeah,
like to.
absolutely. No.
So, obviously the COVID-19 pandemic put a wrench in our plan to move forward earlier in the year. I believe we were looking at June. That has now been postponed, but we did confirm the Riverside City Hall, the council chambers will be available September 21st. So that's our tentative date, presuming that it doesn't get pushed out further because of the COVID-19 pandemic. We have reached out to a number of different stakeholders and participants to confirm their availability. My understanding is that Professor Levin from the Center on Hate Violence and Extremism has confirmed and that he will be available for presentation on trends, both nationally and with regard to the Inland Empire. I've confirmed with local law enforcement to give a presentation on trends and basically what they do to address hate violence in the community in our region. So the chief of police has confirmed. I've reached out to Sheriff Bianco, and I believe he's confirmed he may have a representative there rather than being there personally. And the DA, I'm still waiting for final confirmation. Riverside Fair Housing will be there to discuss, and we've also reached out to a number of different stakeholders. So we're trying to get as many as we had in the queue to begin with. And Dale, you wanted to speak a little bit about who you've reached out to?
I've reached out to CRLA, the California Department of Justice, and the U.S. Department of Justice, and so far, CRLA and the California DOJ are on board. I don't know if U.S. DOJ may or may not be able to participate, but we'll see.
I'm really hopeful that it moves forward. I'm excited to have our presence in the inland region, which I think is a historically underserved region. And I do know that this is an area, a topic that's of interest to the council, both geographically and the subject matter. And I'm excited to learn what we don't know about the trends relating to hate violence in the community.
Great.
But I'm happy to answer any questions if anyone has any.
Just thanks very much for doing this. It's very timely, obviously, and I appreciate it. I look forward to it, and I hope it all works out on the ground.
Well, I'm especially interested, I mean, given the fact that we're providing some financial assistance to undocumented individuals, I'm wondering what the impact's going to be on the Hispanic community with relation to hate violence, and also the Asian American community, where I'm interested to see what's going to go on there. So we're trying to get stakeholders, and I'm excited to learn what's going on in the community.
Great. Are there any public comments regarding the update regarding the hate violence hearing planning?
No email.
No chats, and I'm now scanning the participants for raised hands. Double checking. No raised hands.
I have a comment. Can you hear me?
Yep,
Yes.
go for it,
Councilmember
Councilmember.
Ortiz, are you planning to model what was held in the Central Valley in 2018 in terms of participants and different themes about hate crime and what we are observing in that particular issue area?
So certainly, you know, I'll have to give credit where credit's due. This was frankly inspired by those hearings, and thank you, Councilmember Iglesias, for what you did with regard to those hearings. You know, there are certain regions of California that historically get less play than others, and I do think that the inland region of Southern California, the Riverside County, San Bernardino County area is one of those. It's critical that we represent the entire state and not just the heavily populated coastal areas. So yes, it's definitely inspired by those Fresno hearings, although I think we're pivoting and we're going to focus on hate violence specifically in this hearing, in addition to looking at the region specifically and giving a voice to the region.
This is Dara. Are you going to include anything on hate violence against the LGBTQ, et cetera, community?
Yeah, we're certainly reaching out to stakeholders. I know Adam, our staff member, has been reaching out to make sure that we have representatives to the LGBTQ plus community. Adam, do you want to speak to that at all?
I'd be glad to. We've reached out to the Riverside LGBT organization. Also, we've reached out to the ACLU of Southern California, as well as Asian Americans Advancing Justice, Los Angeles.
Great, thank you.
Councilmember Ortiz, have you identified an organization to speak to the issues that may be confronted by undocumented individuals?
Certainly. I've reached out to TODEC, which is an organization here in the inland region of Southern California. We've had discussions about whether to reach out to the Mexican consulate. I haven't done so yet, but that's still something we're contemplating as to whether that would be of value to the council.
And I would also hope that that's something that CRLA can speak to.
Great. Well, I think we're all really looking forward to this, and as you said, Councilmember Ortiz, the opportunity to hear from a community that doesn't often have on-the-ground hearings like this. Our next order of business is an update from the Government Code 11135 Regulation Subcommittee, so I'll turn it over to Council Members Brodsky and Schur.
Do you want me to start out, Dara?
Please.
We are making progress toward finishing the initial statement of reasons for the draft. I'm hoping that we can have that completed so that it can be sent to the Office of Administrative Law in the next week or two. Dara and I have split up the tasks because Dara's been so consumed by the housing regs, which is an overwhelming task on its own. It's become, it takes a long time, and we are making progress. We're almost there.
And let me just add to that. We are cautiously optimistic that we can hit the same timeline we were talking about with a meeting in the fall for initial. Again, this is a draft approved by the council that will go out for a 45-day comment period as we open the public comment official process for these regulations.
Great. Yeah, I think certainly given the remote format, if we can align those 3 45-day hearings, that's great. If it has to work otherwise, I think one silver lining on our meeting logistics is we can have, more frequent, shorter versions of meetings, given, that we don't have the travel component. So we'll see how that shapes up. Any council member comments or public comments about the update?
No emails.
We have one comment in the chat box. Is it premature to submit comments on 11135 proposed regs? I submitted some 2 months ago, and I'm wondering if I should resubmit them now or wait until later.
Brian, can you address that?
You'll want to wait until they're published into the 45-day period. The initial draft was adopted, and now we're waiting for OAL to approve and publish, and then I would resubmit those comments and any additional ones so that it's part of the official rulemaking record and will be responded to and considered by the council.
That's right. And that notice will go out to the listserv. So there'll be at least 45 days to submit.
Otherwise, if they're submitted now, they won't be part of the official record. So we would prefer that they be.
I'm scanning for raised hands. There are no raised hands.
Chair
Okay,
Mandelbaum, I have a housekeeping matter, if you don't mind. I know my technical difficulty occurred when we were talking about item number 7 with regard to consideration of the Criminal History, CIFRA, and New Parent Leave Act. And my vote was aye on the approval, but I don't know if that got into the record. So I wanted to make sure that was reflected.
Just to be extra cautious, Chair Mandelbaum, if you don't mind just reopening the roll call, and I will call one
Okay,
member.
let's, right now we had it down as a unanimous with 1 abstention, even though we all knew where my colleague on the subcommittee and co-drafter came out on this. Let's do it again. We'll do a motion to adopt the proposed final text of the regulations, to authorize the department to submit the rulemaking package to the Office of Administrative Law, and authorize the department to make any non-substantial or non-substantive changes that OAL requires in order to approve the regulations. Is there a
Councilmember
second?
Ortiz. Oh, my apologies.
Second.
Second.
Councilmember Ortiz.
Aye.
Okay, I think our other
Votes have already
approvals
been taken.
apply, and so now we have a unanimous full council with respect to those regulations, which is always great. Our final subcommittee update is from the subcommittee regarding criminal history and employment hearing, and I'll turn it over to my colleague on the subcommittee, Councilmember Sandoval.
Great, thank you, Chaya. Chaya and I have met with individuals from Legal Aid at Work with regard to putting a public hearing together in November or December of this year. We are initially thinking of the Bay Area and also modeling it similar to the 2018 public hearing on civil rights issues in the Central Valley. The focus will be on the Fair Chance Act and where have we been, where are we currently, and what needs to be addressed with any kind of deficiencies that we perceived through what we are hearing from nonprofit organizations, individuals who are formerly incarcerated, and other interested parties. We envision that it will be a day-long conference. We do understand that there are challenges with regard to COVID-19, and so we are hoping to have an in-person convening, but that may change depending on where we are in the latter part of this year. Some ideas is to focus on, again, allowing individuals who have been affected positively by the Fair Chance Act, identify any deficiencies that may exist with regard to where we are in terms of ensuring that individuals who are formerly incarcerated have opportunities for gainful employment throughout the state, and then move forward in terms of next steps. Is there any type of regulatory action or legislative action that we learn from these types of convenings? So that is our hope and our intent. Of course, it would be informed by what we learn from our status with regard to COVID-19. We do have another meeting via teleconference with individuals Katie Dixon, Stacey Villalobos, and Christopher Ho, all of whom are working with us, and we've had a couple of robust teleconferences in the last couple of months. Chaya, do you want to add anything?
Yeah, we're really excited about this. Some areas that we may also look at for purposes of examining, forward-looking at whether there are new kind of laws or regulations or other efforts that things should be taken are. We do hope to look at and hear from people regarding licensing obstacles and licensing solutions, because obviously that prevents a number of people from pursuing their chosen career out of the gate, irrespective of whether an employer was willing to hire them. We'll hopefully get updates from academics regarding recidivism research or redemption research. There was some old research regarding how likely it is that a formerly incarcerated person would reoffend, and whether that's something an employer should worry about or not under various kind of circumstances. The other area that we're hoping to contact is localities, and the one that comes to mind is Richmond, regarding they have a local ordinance that basically bars criminal history entirely from the employment consideration process, with some exceptions for various categories like law enforcement. So we'd be curious to hear their experience with that and how that's worked for employers and applicants alike. So I think there's a lot of good topics, and we're still in the formulating phase, but we're hoping to have, fingers crossed, an in-person convening in November or December. Any council member comments?
Yeah, I want to again thank you guys for organizing it. It really sounds excellent. And I want to echo something Councilmember Sandoval said about, and I think this also goes to the hate violence. One, too, is when you invite people to speak, I would specifically invite them both to share their experience, but also to sort of encourage them to think about specific regulatory and or legislative changes that the council and its authority on regulatory side could do, and or think about suggesting to the legislature or the governor that to have a focal point. So a lot of information about experience is really, really good, but it would also be helpful to narrow it down and focus on what we can do about it.
Yeah,
we are in agreement. Yes.
Yeah, I think we really need to do that with the hate violence conference too, is really kind of look prospectively in what we can do.
Any public comment on this update?
No emails.
No chats, and I'm now scanning for raised hands among the participants. Double checking. No raised hands.
Okay, well, sorry to have you two do this exercise one more time, but our last order of business on our agenda is a more open-ended public comment opportunity if any participants have a public comment that wasn't specifically tethered to an agenda item.
There is one public comment from an individual who's asking about her specific circumstances. It looks like there's a law enforcement and health and safety component, so we'll respond offline.
No additional chats, and I'm scanning one last time for raised hands from participants. Double checking. No raised hands.
All right, well, that wraps up today's agenda. Thank you for everyone for bearing with us as we navigate this new landscape and participating in the process. Details regarding the council's next regular meeting will be posted in the coming weeks on our webpage, and we do hope you make plans to join us for our September 21st rescheduled hearing in Riverside at the Riverside City Hall. So thanks again for attending, and stay safe and healthy.
Thank you.
Take care.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.